So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you may be listening from today. My name is Ailey Wood. I'm a senior associate in the employment team here at Burgess Salmon, and the webinar that I am delivering today is on hybrid working, emerging trends and disputes. So, the fairly monumental shift in working arrangements that we've all experienced during the pandemic and the ongoing impact that's had on office-based working may seem like old news, but we're certainly still advising clients on a fairly regular basis on issues connected with hybrid working, and often where there are a number of issues at play. And of course, the more complex issues are naturally the ones that tend to come across our desks for advice. And we are still seeing clients and businesses more widely announcing return to office mandates to some degree or another. This is therefore still very much a live issue for a number of businesses. So what I intend to do is take a look at very briefly the current landscape of hybrid working, and then the particular types of employment claims that can arise in relation to hybrid working, and then things we need to think about where there is a proposed change to working arrangements, and finally a brief look at how things are set to change following the Employment Rights Act 2025. Now, for many of us, hybrid working is now the norm. But pre-COVID, it's probably fair to say that full-time office attendance was more typical for most of us. Certainly at that time, while I was in a role that had a degree of flexibility to work from home a day here and there, the general position was that we worked from the office full-time. Now, I've put some stats on the slides from March last year. These were the most up-to-date and official stats that I identified in preparation for this webinar. Of course, that picture may have changed ever so slightly still, but as you can see, one study suggested that as little as just under 5% of UK employees worked from home prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, and that picture looked significantly different in the middle of 2020 at the height of the pandemic, with ONS studies suggesting that in April 2020, almost half of employees were working at least partly from home. Now there appears to be a move back towards increased office attendance, but with hybrid working becoming much more of an established concept. So I think the data would suggest that hybrid working is probably here to stay to some degree or another. So getting to grips with how potential issues with hybrid working might play out in practice is certainly worth thinking about. Worth a brief mention, I think, before I look at potential claims, is a report that was issued towards the end of last year by the House of Lords Select Committee on Home Working. The link is at the bottom of the slides there. That report examined the current prevalence of home working, the trends and returns to the office, and the impact that working from home has had on various elements of working life. And it also looked at the impact on employers in terms of productivity, attracting and retaining talent and collaboration, and the wider effects on the economy and society. Now, the conclusions of that report are not, I don't think, particularly groundbreaking. For example, key findings included that employees report positive outcomes based on flexibility and work-life balance, but find that there's a trade-off in terms of feeling more isolated, having more difficulty accessing mentoring, and finding that the boundary between work and home life has become more blurred. Now, and for employers, the report cites the benefits of hybrid working in recruiting and retaining talent,